Everyone, I'm Hannah, as Jess mentioned. I'm Audience Mobilisation Manager at Trussell. Patrick, I didn't know which of us was first anyway, so I was absolutely relaxed either way. So don't worry, not mixed up at all. I work as part of a team that's responsible for stewarding about 55,000 contactable campaigners, and our team serves them a range of actions and content to deepen their engagement with our vision for a future without the need for food banks, and also mobilise them in support of our campaigns to change the things that are leaving people without enough money for the essentials. Our team also coordinates a range of kind of attention-grabbing campaign moments, activation stunts, those sorts of things, with colleagues across the organisation, but also with external partners like the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, namely for the Guarantee Our Essentials campaign, which is photographed here. But I am here to talk to you about a brand new pilot project that Jess has already kind of mentioned, that we ran with More Onion, where we brought our local data to life in the form of interactive action to kind of bridge people's curiosity into action. And in terms of an agenda, it's actually very straightforward. I probably didn't need to share the agenda. It's only 15 minutes, but I'll be talking you through how we built this brand new action, just sort of the process we went through with More Onion in case you want to do a pilot project or anything like that, how we promoted it, and then, of course, the results. But to take a step back and set the scene a little bit, we had a moment that we wanted to see if there's anything we could do with. So every year we publish how many parcels food banks in the Trussell community provided to people facing hardship. And we get this data straight from food banks, and we use it to create awareness of food bank needs and advocate for the solutions that means no one needs to turn to emergency food to get by. And for us, it's a really big media moment. And in the past, we have mobilised our supporters to take campaigning actions around it. But this year, we're already beginning to ask ourselves, how can we find a way for our supporters to engage with this data in a much more interactive way to drive them to take action and, of course, engagement with our cause? And it just so happened that Jess then approached us around that time when we were asking these questions, asking if we wanted to do a pilot project on Impact Stack 2.0 for a kind of curiosity gap action to do this kind of thing. And so we were like, okay, we're interested. Let's scope this out together. And so we sat down with More Onion and we thought about what that brief could be. And in our kickoff meeting with More Onion, we spoke about how we were keen to utilise our data to raise awareness of hunger locally. And we had a few assumptions that we wanted to test out through this action. So our assumption being that when people are confronted with data that's hyper relevant to them and their local area, they're more likely to take action. And we thought this was a great way to think about that and test that. And we also thought it might be a really good action for further up the funnel. So a lot of our actions that we do in Trussell, we do a lot of Email Your MP actions, those higher bar actions. What would it look like if it was more interactive, engaging, and trying to reach people who maybe weren't as familiar with Trussell or their local food bank? So yeah, we had that kind of objective set. And then we had a few requirements that we were thinking about when we were sort of scoping this out with More Onion. So we wanted this to be compelling. So we need this action to be motivating, as we know we wanted to test whether we could daisy chain an action onto it. So if when someone is confronted by their local data, are they then more likely to go on and take another action? And us as an organisation, we don't have much experience of daisy chaining actions like this. So we thought this was a good thing to test, and making it compelling was really important to us and motivating. Second of all, we wanted it to be really simple and super quick to do. And that wasn't only just to get them to that following action quicker, but we also knew we wanted to do some paid ads as well to reach those audiences I mentioned before. And we were conscious of the journey that people would be going on. So we wanted that when people landed on that page, they could just do it really quick and get that data really quickly. We also wanted it to be conditional, meaning that we wanted to put certain conditions in place to determine what data someone saw to ensure the stats that they did see were motivating. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the slides to come as well. And then finally, we wanted it to be reusable. I mean, we publish this data every year. It's part of our BAU. So we wanted this to be something that we could replicate Yes. And so just to speak a bit more about the process that we went on More Onion, just at like a very high level, step one was setting out that brief together in that kickoff meeting, so that objective, those requirements I mentioned, the conditionality, which I'll speak a bit more about on the next slide. But this is also where we spoke a little bit more about how we would daisy chain, what we would daisy chain. So how the action works is you fall on that page, you put in your postcode, you're confronted with your stats. That's all on Impact Stack 2.0. And then the email your MP action was that we linked to was then on Impact Stack 1.0, because of course we haven't migrated our data across yet. And so that was agreed at that stage. And then the next step was for us to give More Onion the data. And so they provided us with like a templated Excel that we needed to put the data in to help them build the action. Step three being building the action. So that was on More Onion to do. They sent regular updates on progress and quite incremental in how we signed off bits of design to make sure there was progress happening all the time. And then finally, together we tested the action. So it was more and more Onion to test the functionality and to just make sure from a technical perspective it worked. From our perspective, we took the decision to test 650 individual postcodes. This was because, just we've never done this action before. We wanted it to be accurate. Trussell's reputation is on the line. And so, yes, we formulated this intricate testing plan where we inputted 650 different postcodes to make sure that we cross-checked that with our master spreadsheet to check that all the constituencies were correct. It was intense, but it was well worth it. And then in terms of the conditionality, so all this thinking that we had to do beforehand, I am going to talk a little bit about this, but I'm not going to go into loads of detail because it's kind of boring, but I thought it'd be interesting to talk you through the thinking that we had to go through to ensure that we were meeting that objective of raising concern locally and compelling people to take action and ensuring that the stats they were served were accurate and motivating. So our dream situation is that people put in their postcode and they get served their constituency level statistics, because that is the most granular information and research we have other than the food bank themselves. And so we wanted, as far as possible, to serve people those stats. And that is what the majority of people will see. But for different postcodes and scenarios, that wasn't always possible. For example, though Trussell food banks operate across the UK, amounting to about just over 1,400 distribution centres, not every constituency has a distribution centre. And so we didn't want to be in a situation where someone put in their postcode and they were served with 0. So it's little things like that in terms of the limitations of our data that we needed to think about and work with More Onion on. So we agreed up to 3 different conditions or scenarios with More Onion like this, where, like I said, for the minority of users, if their data met certain conditions, such as there's no distribution centre, they were served with their regional statistics, or I live in Scotland, so for me it would be Scotland statistics. And the idea being is that this kept the activation motivating, it kept it urgent, and since the framing was see your local stats, we felt for the minority of situations this was fine and it met our requirements and our objective. So that is all the thinking that went into it beforehand. Just all this thinking was required because we're obviously starting from scratch, but it was a really interesting process. And then we needed to get it out into the world. So as I mentioned, this is an annual thing that we do anyway, part of our business as usual, a sort of annual media moment for Trussell and our community of food banks. So as I'm sure you can imagine, there's already an organisational-wide promotional plan for our end of year's data. And so we were mainly folding this brilliant new action into that existing plan. So that included weaving it into our press releases, so national and local, because as I'm sure you can imagine, this was a fantastic ask for a local press release as well, to bring that local data to life. And then, of course, sharing it on social, working with the social team. And then also, for any of you out there who your charity supports a network of charities, for these big moments, you have templated communications that you send out to other charities in your community. So for our food banks, we send out templated newsletter comms, templated social media, templated press releases, so they can slot their own data in. And so, of course, we included that as a call to action as well. In addition, we did do some paid adverts around this as well, because we knew we wanted to see if we could reach some new audiences. So in terms of the results, I think our paid ads were pretty successful. So we only spent about £5,800 on our paid ads, and that delivered. And obviously, take this with a pinch of salt, because, you know, sometimes these stats are a little bit finger in the air, but it achieved 2.2 million impressions, over 43,000 clicks, and at a cost per click of 16p per click, which we were pretty pleased with. And looking at the creatives that we had as well, the one that seemed to be the most successful was that one that you saw in the previous page of a headline clipping. That seemed to kind of drive a lot of interest. It felt like it was urgent breaking news, so that got it was a strong performer, just to share that back. Crucially, how many postcodes were actually inputted into the tool? So that was 18,000. We're over 18,000 now, which we're really pleased with. So that, just to flag, that's not unique. So that is literally the amount of postcodes that have gone in. And we had over 500 emails sent to MPs, and that hit 350 out of the 450 constituencies. And as I mentioned up top, we don't have much experience of daisy chaining actions like this. So we were like, cool. It felt like a good benchmark going forward. And so, yeah, so all in all, we're pretty pleased, and we're looking forward to doing more daisy chaining actions like this to see how we can grow this. And so finally, I just wanted to share a few learnings that we had from this whole experience. So, you know, as was mentioned, it was a pilot project. It was brand new, and it was overall, it was actually really smooth. But that might have been partly because we did set aside quite a long lead time for this. So we were chatting to Jess and the team in December, I think. Work started in the new year, and then this launched end of April. So there was a really good lead time. And that was needed because we had all that thinking to do at the beginning. So I'm really glad we had that time to be able to make it a success. And of course, we also had to get trained on Impact Stack 2.0 as well. So that needs to be included in that timeline. The social paid ads were important in terms of driving traffic. More budget would have unlocked more fun geo-targeting opportunities. So you can imagine you could create lots of creative of how many parcels in Yorkshire, if that person is in Yorkshire, for example. But our budget couldn't unlock that option. It's not enough money to do that sort of thing, unfortunately. But maybe one day, if we did for some reason have lots of money to do that, we could think about that. Something that was lovely is we did have good feedback from food banks and food bank facing colleagues as well, that they found this a really useful interactive activity to take to their audiences to bring their own stats to life, which was really lovely. But on the flip side, I think our team could have been a little bit more prepared for the amount of questions we did have through from food banks. We had done some briefings and some little briefs and stuff like that, but understandably, for a food bank, if you're popping in your postcode and you're not seeing the stats you're expecting. So, for example, because the constituency boundaries have changed recently, or relatively recently, you as a food bank might not realise that you have another distribution centre in your constituency. So you might be confused when you put in your postcode and you see some stats and you're like, oh, that's like double what I thought it would be. So there was a little bit of back and forth, but once we had that back and forth, food banks were really pleased with it, and we had good feedback, which was fantastic because we're here to support and serve our community of food banks. And just a note on the platform itself, and I think Jess is going to talk more to you guys about this later, but linking Impact Stack 1.0 to Impact Stack 2.0 actually went off without a hitch. We were a little bit nervous about it, like, is this going to work? But because the parcels by postcode activity didn't actually involve any data flow with Salesforce, our CRM, it was actually quite straightforward, and it was absolutely chill and absolutely fine. So that was really good. At the time of working on Impact Stack 2.0, reporting was still a work in progress, but luckily the team will be able to send us a workaround, so we were still able to pull off the stats that we needed. And then finally, Impact Stack 2.0 was very intuitive and it was easy to use, even though I said up top that it was useful to have that time aside. Actually getting to know the platform didn't actually take that long, which was good. And from our Trussell's perspective, we just have to find the time to migrate everything across, and that's when we'll be ready to get everything across. But yeah, that's it from me. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen, which is always really awkward.
That's great. Thank you so much, Hannah. That was absolutely fab. And Charlotte's just going to have a look. We should have had it ready to share, but somebody's just very
Oh,
sensibly asked in the chat. Can we have
yeah,
a link to the
let me
action
grab that for you
itself?
now.
So we'll pop that in the chat now, and you can see it live and find out how many food parcels were handed out in your area if you live in the UK. Though I know we've got a few people in the audience who don't. Find
Oh yeah, sorry for
UK
people who don't
postcode.
live
That's
in
okay. So
yeah,
thank you
you
so
got to do
much,
it.
so much, Hannah. And for those of you in the audience who are not less familiar with Impact Stack, so just to explain the distinction between the two. So obviously, most of our clients are still currently using the existing version of the software, Impact Stack 1. And we're running these pilot projects at the moment in the new version, Impact Stack 2. So Trussell have got both at the moment. And yeah, there's going to be a process of moving stuff across, and for all of our clients across the next year to 18 months. So I'll talk about a bit more about that at the end. So there's a few questions in the chat for you. So first up, one from Lizzie saying, could you confirm, you said you spent around 5K on ads. Does this include creative and paid activity? And how long did the campaign run?
So that was just for the ads themselves. So in terms of the creative, our internal creative team were able to create those assets. What else was listed in there? Sorry.
Creative and paid activity. Does this include creative?
Yeah, so it's the 5K was for the paid ads themselves, if that makes sense.
So did you have in-house capacity for
Yeah,
generating the ads
exactly, to create
themselves?
the
Got it.
assets. Yeah.
Cool. And how long did the campaign run for?
For that budget, I think I say only like 16p cost per click is good. I think it lasted a week and a half in the end. If memory serves, it was definitely just under 2 weeks, something like that.
And am I right? This campaign activation actually, you were moving on to another campaign activity quite quickly after this. Is that right?
Yeah. So this is the thing that we just don't have much experience with in terms of like daisy chaining immediately onto it, because our team is 2.8 members of staff, and so to be able to get everything in place to not only work like intensely with Moran and on this new action, but then create another action to follow it afterwards. Having that resource to do it is difficult, but luckily, because this is something we want to reuse every year, I'm hoping that template is there now. We might be able to do it more. Yeah, and in terms of the onward journey, if you are new to Trussell, you then go on an onboarding journey to allow you to learn more about Trussell, but also the Guarantee Our Essentials campaign. And there'll be various actions you can take on that onboarding journey. But equally, we do still remain quite agile in a lot of our work because we are responsive to the external environment. For example, I'm sure a lot of you on the call are really concerned and maybe campaigning around the proposed cuts to disable people's social security. So it might be that we, serve them those actions as well. But yeah, we do have an onboarding journey for people who are brand new to Trussell and brand new to a campaigning action.
That's great. Thank you. Just scanning down the questions. So yeah, is the action online? So you talked about the onward journey, and just going to leave for a moment if anybody's got any further questions for Hannah. So I've got a question which is about sort of how it fitted, because obviously your annual stats is an annual media moment for Trussell. And so one of your key ways of being able to promote it was the media work that would be going on already. I mean, you've talked a little bit about how it was a really nice tool for the food banks. How did your media team find it? Was it of value for them? How did it fit into your sort of existing pattern of how you talk about your annual stats?
Yeah, it was really interesting because the media team were grateful to have that included in the press release, especially for the local press releases. But as a lot of you who work in media or media adjacent will know, journalists don't often include links that you give them. But I was really pleased that when I was looking at the media coverage, and I think end of years on average gets about 700 media mentions on the day type thing. Like that includes all those local press association type ones. But I was delighted that our influencer team did an influencer press release where it brought together lots of celebrities to say, oh, this isn't right, blah, blah, blah. And then I was delighted that it was linked to in there. And I was like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, so there was a few examples where it was linked to, more likely in that local stuff, which was great. So yeah, the media team was pleased, but like I say, that actually translating into journalists, including the link, I don't know what conversion rate that would be, but I would expect out of 700 pieces of coverage, probably 10.
Yeah, they don't want to point to your thing, do they?
No.
But that's really interesting about how powerful it is potentially for your local coverage, and to make it very easy to work in a localized angle for a journalist. That's great. Thank you. And a question from Gina: did you get any good responses from MPs off the back of your supporter action? Because of course the email to MP action also picked up the localized data, so the MP got an email that told them about the situation in their local area. So have you had any follow-up from MPs or different responses?
No, and we do say to supporters, please send us back if you get any interesting responses from MPs. We haven't on that action. Supporters are more, I think, this is such an assumption and a guess, but I feel like when it's a really topical moment, when motivation is really high, for example, we've got an email or MP action live at the moment around the cuts to disabled people's social security. Seems like supporters are more motivated to send back those MP responses. But for this one, because we knew these cuts and the bill was coming up, our MP letter, MP email, it picks up those local data, so a token takes that through, which is great. But otherwise, it's quite generic. It kind of calls for our usual solutions and stuff like that. So we haven't, I don't know if it's just because it's not as tied to an urgent moment, we haven't had many responses back, but for our current action, we are seeing more responses back, which isn't directly.
It's hard to kind of link up the causation there, isn't it? But presumably there's a kind of warming up factor going on there as well. Okay, that's fantastic. Thank you so much, Hannah. Hannah will be staying on the call, so if you've got further questions for Hannah, feel free to pop them in the chat. Hannah will be able to interact there while Patrick's speaking. So thanks, Hannah. I'm going to hand over to our second speaker now, Patrick from St. Mungo's, who is Assistant Head of Public Engagement, and is going to be talking about a second exciting pilot project in the new generation of Impact Stack, which is a storytelling element. So Patrick, if you'd like to pop your slides up, I'll give you a thumbs up.
Sure thing. I've recovered from the heart attack of almost going first.
Almost going first, yeah, I'm sorry about that. It's not a good way to treat your speakers, is it?
Let me share my screen. Oh.
Okay, it's obviously just
the right place.
I've got PowerPoint, just need to launch the slideshow.
People see the slideshow now?
Yeah, we're good. Yeah, over to you. Over to you, Patrick.
Cool. Thank you very much, Jess. I'm also on one screen today, so I won't be able to see most of what's happening on Zoom. So if anything goes wrong or you can't hear me suddenly, please just yell or something. But cool. As Jess said, I'm Patrick. I'm the Assistant Head of Public Engagement at St. Mungo's. I've been at St. Mungo's for about 2 years now. My role is effectively leading the digital fundraising team, and that includes anything digital that brings income into the organization. So our social media offering for acquisition, the sort of fundraising focused parts of the website, all of our donation forms, which are hosted by Impact Stack, and all of our supporter email comms as well, all fall under my remit, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail in this presentation. For those of you who might not know St. Mungo's, we're a homelessness charity, operating mostly in the sort of south of England and the Midlands, and we have frontline homelessness related services, so going out, finding people who are sleeping rough on the streets, bringing them into accommodation, and then all sorts of services beyond that, as I'll get into in this presentation, for helping people to rebuild their lives after homelessness. So I don't have an agenda slide, so it'll be a surprise to everyone. But what I'm going to be talking about today is interactive storytelling at St. Mungo's, using the Impact Stack 2.0 platform, and how we sort of developed an interactive storytelling tool with More Onion. So, just to set the scene a little bit, so we've done loads of work at Mungo's on our email program. We've managed to grow the list up to like about 100,000 people. We do far more interesting and different emails than we did 2 years ago, and we've got a really good sort of system for planning emails, getting emails out to supporters, and raising a lot of income through that channel. However, one of the areas that has been lacking, certainly since I started the organization, is we didn't have any sort of active email welcome journey. So for anyone who joined our list, they were just sort of plonked into the email plan as it was at that point, which obviously isn't ideal. So we were looking to change that. One of the other problems sort of associated with the cause of homelessness is that the general public has quite a limited view of what homelessness actually is. A lot of people obviously associate it immediately with people on the streets, people rough sleeping. Obviously, it extends far beyond that into the realms of like hidden homelessness. But also, it kind of limits what you think the solution of homelessness is. It's not just getting someone into a place with a roof or a place with four walls. It's actually rebuilding your life after you've experienced sleeping rough, which is what Mungo's does, but it's not necessarily the easiest thing to communicate all the time. And also at Mungo's, we have a lot of complex and different services. Yes, we're very heavily in accommodation. We are a housing association, but we also have employment services. We have gardening training workshops. We have mental health services, physical health services. We have all sorts of complex and different offerings to, well, as I say, to rebuild someone's life after homelessness. That isn't just, again, getting someone into a building with a roof and four walls. So we really wanted to make sure that we could convey all of that to anyone new who came to our email list, and that it's not just about getting someone physically off the streets. There's a lot more to rebuilding someone's life. So the brief as presented to More Onion when we started working with them was we wanted to create a welcome journey for new subscribers to our list. That's both non-financial and cash, which covers the complexity of the homelessness cause, why St Mungo's needs your support, the depth and breadth of St Mungo's services beyond just accommodation and rough sleeping, everything that we do in order to rebuild someone's life, and to connect the supporters to the real life experiences of our service users. And that was really important to us. Everything we do at St Mungo's comes back to our service users, or our clients as we refer to them. And we include our client stories front and center in all of our comms. And we really want to make sure that we're a client first organization. And that was a really important part of this brief, to make sure that those experiences came through for people who were just joining our email list. And then the solution. So what we've looked at is, and I'll go into the creative process and then maybe the next slide, is identifying the key areas of St Mungo's work which will resonate with supporters. So as I say, we've got loads of different services. So which ones do we think are going to be the most easy to connect with for our supporter base? Using ideation and creative sessions facilitated by More Onion in order to like find what these like nuggets of comms could be to talk to our supporters about. And then also through those creative sessions, creating engagement actions that convey the more complex areas of St Mungo's work. So as I said, things like recovery, accommodation, employment, even within those, there's so many different factors and like facets of that work. So recovery can be anything from like drug and alcohol recovery services to our gardening program, putting down roots, to creative writing workshops, to anything you can think of, really. Accommodation, although it sounds very straightforward, we have lots of different accommodation services, things like housing first, no second night out. We operate like care homes. We have like lots of different kinds of accommodation. And then employment, which again is another facet of our work, which focuses on getting our clients who are keen to get back into the job market, back on their feet in that regard. And that's kind of what I'm going to focus on in the next couple of slides. But just before I go into that, I kind of wanted to just illustrate, I guess, the amount of sort of work and like ideation that goes in behind the scenes for these ideas. So what we did was we worked with More Onion, and we got a big group of people together for an ideation session. That's people from all over the organization to think about what ideas could be useful to talk about to our supporters. Um, and most importantly, to talk about in the most engaging way possible. So we started out with things like this negative brainstorm around like how might we tell a story that's so boring that nobody in our email list wants to read it or cares about it, and threw up all those ideas so we knew what we like weren't looking at, um, and then how might a client or a staff case study be compelling in a way that supporters feel like making a gift? Because obviously the idea at the end of everything is for people to give us cash. And we came up with loads of different ideas around like the format of different engagement actions, things like a comic strip, a poem, like lots of different ways of people of like telling a story or conveying information to people. And then we also came up with things like or discussed things like um, again, leaning into that like engagement side of things. So how might a supporter physically engage, or I suppose digitally physically engage with an action? So beyond the things like just reading and watching a video, things like sending a message or clicking through a story or reading a virtual book and stuff like that. So to really get us into that headspace of how to make an engaging action. And then other things like different platforms that we could use and the likes of like LinkedIn or like WhatsApp and things like that. And then finally, that all culminated into this beautiful welcome journey, which has been laid out for us by Moronian. Um, and this really, again, I put this up really to show the amount of sort of work that goes on behind the scenes, but also to illustrate the journey that we're taking our supporters on. So over on the left-hand side of the screen is where people would join our journey. And as I say, most people come through to our list um, off the back of a very sort of traditional rough sleeping advert. So your guy on the street, blue sleeping bag, like very traditional rough sleeping imagery, in order to align with what people's sort of perceptions at that stage of their journey are. And then all the way through this journey from left to right, we start peppering them with more information. So we've got stuff like explaining what you should do if you encounter someone sleeping rough, like what options you have, all the way through to stuff like explaining our Putting Down Roots program and how like our gardening program can help people rebuild their lives, help with their mental health, help with their understanding of like things growing and changing and stuff like that. And then all the way towards this very right-hand side yellow engagement action, which I'm going to talk about in a bit more detail, which is our employment engagement action, which I guess sort of caps off that whole journey and sort of is one way of looking at a life rebuilt after homelessness and going back into the job market. So, interactive storytelling, looking specifically at employment. We chose to look at employment work because it's very vital, and for some clients, getting back into the job market is really important for them. It's very human centric. It's very recognizable to supporters. Like the vast majority of people on our list will have had a job at some point in their life and will be able to relate to the sort of experiences our clients are going through. And as I say, it's relatable generally because most people have applied for jobs or have been through some sort of application process or have experienced some of the feelings around like going for a job interview or getting prepared or getting rejected and things like that. So those are the things that we wanted to like tap into with our supporters, but we're also quite aware that it can be quite complex. It's quite a long process. It takes some sort of specialism. It's not really the kind of thing that you can easily sit down and just read about. So what we wanted to do is make that a bit more interactive. Enter a day in the life of Desiree. Can everyone see that moving? Wonderful. I love it when technology works. So what this is a bit of an interactive, well, it's an interactive storytelling, really. We've got Desiree's Desiree's story here, who is an actual colleague at Mungo. She works in our employment team, and she works with clients to get them back into the job market. So it's involves like taking people to job fairs, finding out what they like, what they enjoy, what really motivates them, and getting them prepared for the world of work and for like interviews, application processes. And that's what this takes you through. It basically puts you in Desiree's shoes. It gives you the example client of Hannah. And you're able to click through, learn more about Hannah, make decisions based on that information, find the right job for her, eventually get her a job, celebrate when that happens. And then, yeah, again, it goes through all of the different steps of a day or a week in the life of Desiree. And we think generally it's really engaging and really lovely, and it centers the work around Desiree. I've just thrown this up to sort of show what that looks like in the back end. But here you can see that you get all these different options. It's basically a sort of choose your own adventure style interactive element. And there's all these different sort of decision trees that we've thought through around how we can get someone to the right outcome at the end where Hannah's got the job that she wants. And we've all collectively in Desiree's shoes done a good job. Just wanted to talk quickly about why we think this action is so important and so good for us. As I say, like everything that we do at Mungos is all about our clients, and because we provide frontline services and we are a very human organization, we want to make that clear to our supporters. So centering the real life experiences of our clients. Yes, Hannah is sort of an amalgamation of lots of different client experiences, but like that is the real life experience that our clients go through. So we wanted to make that really clear to our supporters to really put them in those shoes. It really coherently and easily explains our employment services without forcing you to sit and read a load of information about how employment services work. It's fun, it's engaging, it like takes you through all the different steps that you probably hadn't really thought of about applying for a job on someone's behalf or applying for a job when you've experienced homelessness. It heroes Desiree, which is really important as well. Our colleagues at Mungos really are incredible people, and they do so much great work that I don't think they even realize necessarily how great it is. And it's really encouraging and really lovely for us to be able to bring someone to the forefront of our comms to say, like, look at this amazing work that that these people in our organization do. It's obviously very engaging for the supporter, but I was going to say most importantly, but that's fair. But it's fun, it's different, it's something that you want to click on and want to do. Again, rather than just reading an email about employment, you can really get into this and imagine what it's like to be Desiree and click through different things, and you get confetti at the end, and everyone loves confetti, and that's really nice. And I suppose just to touch on, I think this is my last slide, just to touch on the Impact Stack 2.0 of it all. Working with Impact Stack has made this process so much easier. We were able to use a tech stack that we're already working with. So as I may have mentioned before, we're already onboarded with Impact Stack 1. So all of our donation forms, all of our campaigning actions are all through Impact Stack 1. So this just made the process really seamless because it's tech that we're already working with. The integration between teams at More Onion, obviously working creatively with More Onion and working on the tech side of things with Impact Stack makes things so much easier. If you have an idea that you've created with More Onion, you can quite easily translate that to Impact Stack because they sort of speak the same language. And then things like building this on our own site would have taken, or our own like Mungo site would have taken so much more internal resource, potentially more cost. Everything was really seamless and straightforward with Impact Stack. And we're also able to be really visually consistent because, as I say, we're using Impact Stack already with our donation forms and campaigning actions. So it just means that our branding and everything can be really seamlessly transitioned from one to the other. That is me. I feel like I've sped through that. I will highlight that this action isn't actually live at the moment. I mean, because it's so far into the towards the end of the welcome journey, it hasn't actually been experienced by supporters yet. But I still really like it. I thought we should talk about it. And there's a link here for when these slides go around. I'm assuming that Charlotte or Jess might drop this in the chat as well. And if you want to connect with me and see what I'm posting about on LinkedIn, then there's a link to that as well.
Thank you so much, Patrick. That was absolutely great. Charlotte, if you can pick up the link and drop that in the chat. Obviously, we'll circulate the links to both of the interactive tools and all of the slides alongside the recordings when the email goes out. So don't worry, you will get a chance to experience Hannah's journey with Desiree yourself. It really is a lovely interactive tool, and I'm very grateful to both Hannah and Patrick for coming and sharing with us today, but also for the fun it's been to work on these really great projects. We feel very lucky. We've got some great questions for Patrick in the chat, so I'm just going to work my way through those. Lots of appreciation from Lizzie. The interactive storytelling is incredible. Is this something More Onion helped to build? The website function, or was this client responsibility? I'm happy to come in on this, but I'll allow you to to kick that off.
Yeah, so this was something that More Onion helped build for us, essentially. It was obviously all managed as part of the project group, so any of the like copy creatives, the way they looked and sort of felt, all came from a sort of collaborative space, but the actual like physical building of it was done by More Onion and Impact Stack, thankfully, very helpfully. But all of it was sort of handed over to us very straightforwardly. It's all very editable in the Impact Stack interface, so it's not like it was built in some sort of black box and then we didn't really know what we were doing with it. So it has been handed over in a really coherent and easy to use way.
Oh, that's great to hear. So obviously it means it's very easy for you to make any amendments that you need to it. And just to obviously this one is this piece of interactive storytelling was built as part of a wider project. So obviously it's quite integrated into that. But the whole idea of this pilot project and this new piece of functionality is that longer term, it will be a piece of functionality that's available within Impact Stack for any client using Impact Stack. So the idea is eventually clients would be able to build interactive storytelling elements like this without any input from us at all, merely that you have access to the software. So we're a little way from that yet, but that's the goal. that it's going to become generalized functionality that any clients can use. So obviously Miriam's question about engagement results, obviously we've dealt with that. We'll have to have a kind of round two when you've got some feedback from when, but obviously it's quite embedded
Absolutely.
into this supporter journey. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how, what the response is from supporters when they reach that. So scrolling down, lots of thank yous and so how did you get it to supporters? Do you want to talk a bit about where it comes in the welcome journey and why it's there?
Yeah, sure. I probably skipped over that a bit quickly. This goes out to everyone who joins our email list. So that can be people who have signed up through petitions or any non-financial action, and anyone who's given us a cash donation. So that's essentially built as an automation in MailChimp, the CMS that we use. It sort of comes towards the end of our journey, of our supporter welcome journey. Basically, again, as the journey starts off with a really sort of like, again, traditional stance on homelessness, or a traditional like exposure to homelessness. And what we've tried to do is make lots of different touch points so that people learn a bit more about what it takes to recover, what Mungo does. Again, we're not just frontline services, we're all the stuff in the back end. And although it's not necessarily correct for every client that comes through our services, employment is quite a large factor in a lot of clients' recovery journeys. So it's quite a nice sort of bookend to the welcome journey to be like, this is a nice sort of full circle moment. This person has come from sleeping rough back into the workforce. Again, I say that with a pinch of salt and a caveat that it's obviously not necessarily representative for all of our clients' experiences, but it's quite I guess a straightforward thing for supporters to understand as a like recovery moment in the homelessness space.
That's fantastic, thank you. And it's so lovely question from Hannah. Thank you, Hannah. So what was the process like working with your colleagues who lead internally on these services so that this creative storytelling brilliant, brings it to life?
I will say we're quite lucky at Mungo's, because so much of our within the public engagement team, which essentially is responsible for all of the comms that go out to mass reach public channels. Because so much of what we do relies on the stories of our clients and our colleagues, we have quite good relationships already with our service colleagues. But obviously it was really lovely. Like, as I say, like a lot of the time when you speak to our service colleagues, they because it's just like a job to them or it's like their day job, they don't understand that these things they're doing are so amazing. So it is really nice to like to have that experience and to talk to people who just do these like amazing things that I could never do, and like literally saving people's lives. And yeah, it's a really lovely experience, and it just makes it all so much more, I guess, authentic and real when you are able to like reference these things that that happen in your organization with like real people and the experiences of like actual human beings. So yeah, it's been really lovely.
I know that Claire, because Claire spoke to Desiree as part of the kind of preparation of my colleague Claire, and it was one of the highlights of her recent working life. She absolutely raved about it afterwards, said, you know, it was just incredibly inspiring. So
Yeah. Also,
you know,
Desiree is just great, generally.
yeah, she's
So.
clearly a really special person. Cool. Okay, any final questions for Patrick before I kind of talk a little bit more about the you know, technology that sits behind this and how it can be available to others? I'll just give everyone a few more moments to add. Any further questions while I'm mucking around with my screen share? Okay. So, right, can I get a thumbs up? Can you see my slides okay? Cool, thank you, team. I'll just tell you a little bit more about these actions. So these actions were both built, sorry, I'll help the slides gallop into the future. So these two actions we've just looked at were created as pilot projects in the new version of Impact Stack. So new features like curiosity gap actions are currently available as standalone pilot projects. So the most obvious use case, of course, is this localized data, as in the Trussell example. But you could also use this curiosity gap concept with another kind of a data set. So for example, enter the name of your pension provider or your bank and get personalized information that, you know, would motivate hopefully for people to understand an issue more deeply or be motivated to take action. I'm sure you can immediately think of ways that interactive storytelling could bring your organization's work to life and allow people to engage with it in a less passive way. And I can see from the level of engagement in the chat how this is obviously sparking lots of ideas for people. So other possible pilot projects in the new version of Impact Stack look at things like engagement quizzes with a smooth page flow that allow people to interact with your content in an engaging way. And Impact Stack 2 also has really powerful functionality for coalitions, allowing you to run joint actions where each organization can have their own branding on the same action. So you've got the same counters, you're contributing to the same action pot, but separate access to their own data, which we know can be a real barrier to coalition working. So if you're working in a coalition, talk to us. We have solutions. So during 2026, we'll be migrating existing clients to the new platform. These new features will gradually be rolled into it so that they're generally available as part of the feature set. But naturally, Impact Stack 2 will still have the functionality that Impact Stack 1 already offers and our clients will already be familiar with, such as impactful, well optimized petition forms like these. And we'll also be looking at a reconfigured set of digital advocacy tools. So as well as the existing powerful functionality to personalize messages per target that we have in Impact Stack at the moment, that'll still be available. But we're also looking at new options, prompting you to consider how best to deliver messages to your target. So for example, not necessarily emailing them immediately. Do you want to delay delivery, or do you want to capture messages for delivery as a digest or via online mechanisms? So really prompting you to think more flexibly about how you can most effectively influence a target. We're really keen to make sure that digital campaigning is fit for the future. So at the moment, we're running a survey to help take a snapshot of the sector, what's working, what's not, what's challenging, what could be easier. And we'd really like your input. We'd really like to encourage you and other campaigners to take part. So my colleague Charlotte will be dropping a link into the chat to that survey. Please take part, please circulate it, share it with people. The more people take part, the more interesting a picture we'll be able to build. And we'll be sharing the results at an online event in September. And that'll be another chance to come together to share and learn around creative and effective online actions and open a bit of a conversation on that. So briefly again, obviously Impact Stack 2 will still, so that's the survey. It will still offer the same facility to create great donation forms for your supporters, and of course any other forms where you want a well-optimized, smooth user experience, structured data capture and consent management. So other kinds of forms, order materials or simple surveys, sign up for events. And obviously some of you will be on our mailing list already because you've downloaded some of our free reports. You've got great content offering people a value exchange, a chance to sign up and join your mailing list in return for access to your content can be a really great way of building your list. So if you would like a peek at the new version of Impact Stack, whether you're a current Impact Stack 1 user or you'd just like to see a bit more about what it's going to be like, we're going to be running a short demo. We'll take a short break and then we'll run a short demo. So for now, we'll just be wrapping up the main part of the event. So I'm just going to take my share down. So we'll be just restarting the demo in about 5 minutes. So we'll take a short comfort break. If you'd like to join us for the demo, just hold on the call and we'll restart at 5 past. Anybody who doesn't want to hold on, you're very welcome to head off now. We'll share the recording of both sessions, the presentation slides, the links to both those actions with everyone who's registered. And you're welcome, obviously, to share those with your colleagues. If you're not yet opted in to receive our emails about future events, resources, case studies, surveys, and more, please sign up using the link, which Charlotte's going to drop into the chat now. For now, I'm going to say a huge thanks to Patrick and to Hannah for the time that they've dedicated to sharing their projects, and particularly to them and their organisations for bringing us such fabulous projects to work on. We're thrilled to be able to work on Impact Stack and to develop new functionality alongside clients with great causes to work on and great and creative projects. So huge thanks to them. Thank you, Patrick and Hannah. If you'd like to hold on for the demo, just stay on the call and we'll see you again at we'll restart at 5 past. So quick comfort break.